Welcome to this new video. This time I want to dedicate this video to those who are new to IT, networking, information security, or to those who are trying to understand what is a network port. Probably you are a developer, you work in DevOps, or you are a sysadmin and you have a hard time understanding what a network port is. And I want to explain that in a clear, concise way without going too deep or getting too technical into it. So as you can see here, I have an Nmap session, not Nmap, a Netstat session on this laptop, that I'm connected to. And what that's going to show me are all the active connections in this case, or established or previous close connections that I had from this computer out to another computer. As you could see, some of the states established or closed. Now, it is important for you to understand what network ports are, because that's how the services are going to communicate and how the sessions are going to be maintained between devices, right? So I'm gonna run with it. I'm gonna try to be as clear as I can, and I'm gonna show you one or two examples of how it works to better help you understand how network ports works and what they are. So the first thing that I'm gonna do is this. I'm gonna start a new session to another host, and in this case I'm gonna be using RDP, which is remote desktop services, and I'm going to set up a connection to this host 192.168.175. So something you have to keep in mind is that each service is going to be associated with a network port, and that is something that we don't come up with, that is already established in one of the RFPs out there. I forgot what the RFP is, but I believe that I have a link here, right here. So if you go to RFP, what is this RFP? I don't see the number in here, but if you Google service name and transport protocol per registry, you're going to see that each service name is going to be associated with a port number. And again, something to keep in mind, and this is to keep track of the sessions that you're going to be using on the transport protocols. So as we know, we have two widely used or mostly used transport protocols, that is TCP and UDP. And you are going to have different services working on the transport protocol. Some services work on TCP and UDP, and other services work on only one of the two. Again, that you have TCP and UDP, and then you have other transport protocols right here. And as you know, UDP is connectionless, and TCP is connection-oriented type of protocol, right? So just to give you an example with well-known services like FTP, File Transport Protocol, you have that FTP works on the transport protocol TCP on port 21, but it's also on UDP on port 21 and SCTP on port 21. But let's find something else. For instance, Telnet usually works on port 23 on TCP. You have the 23s on UDPs, and that's usually the protocols not to transmit data, but that can be used to establish some connections. Honestly, I have to disclose that I don't know the intricacies, the in and outs of why you have Telnet working on 23. It seems to me it's similar to FTP, that you have some sessions not to transfer data, but some sessions associated on the UDP protocols. Anyway, so what I wanted to show you is that each service is going to have a protocol number associated to it over whichever transport protocol is going to be using. And that's what we see here, right? When you do a netstat to see all the sessions that you're running at any given time, you are going to see interesting things. And one of them is that you're going to see the local address, which is your address, right? In this case, you're going to see the loopback IP address, and then you're going to see the IP address of the interface card. In this case, I only have one interface, but if you had more than one, you're going to see that there. And then you're going to see the port associated to it. So in this case, I have my local address is 192.168.170.119. And then I am listening on port, or this device I'm saying, it's listening on port 445, right? And when you see the foreign addresses, that we have a connection established between these two hosts. The other host is 192.168.175, and that host is connected on or listening on port 40, not listening, connecting on port 49878. Now, as you could see, if we go back to that previous list that we had before, and we search for port 445, let me scroll down here. I'm in the 200s. Let me so I got to 445, and you can see that 445 is associated to Microsoft NetBIOS, and then you have that on TCP and UDP. So usually when you see 445, you can assume, not always though, that you are running, or that the device, the remote device is running a Microsoft environment over NetBIOS, right, or any other Microsoft service. So if I go back to my previous screen, I'm gonna see that I have this computer that I have. And by the way, this is the computer that I'm working from, and it has an established session with a remote host that is connected to it on port 445, right? So as you could see, the foreign address and the local address. Now, what I want to show you is this. I'm going to open up my remote desktop services, right? And as you could see right here, let me change this. It's not the one, it's this one. I'm going to connect to another computer using remote desktop services. And remote desktop services or RDP uses by default port 3389. So if I go up here to the top, I'm in the 400, maybe number 7. So if I come down here to 3389, actually these are the 300. My bad. Let me find the 3000. So I'm back here. So what I wanted to show you the 3389, and I was looking for the 300s. So 3389 is the non-port for Microsoft Remote Desktop Services, right? And again, you have it on TCP and UDP depending on the transport protocol that the system uses. So when I established the session over remote desktop services, I don't have to specify the port, as you could see right here, because I could do colon 3389. But because I am using the default port on the remote session, then the application is going to use the remote setting because the remote host is listening on port 3389. So I'm going to click on connect, and I'm going to say yes. And as you could see, now I have an established session over RDP between two hosts. This host right here, I'm going to call this a server because it's using is servicing a request, right? Is listening on port 3389. and the other connection, which is my client, which is this computer, and I have this I color coded the tab so it is not that confusing when I'm moving between one tab and the other. This is my client computer. It is connecting to a remote session on port 3389. So let me show you this. So I'm gonna do netstab -n so I can show the in a numerical format. And I can see here that, look at this session right here, right? Let me see. So I have my IP address 192.168.170-19 on port 51706 is connected to 192.168.175 on port 3389. So if I bring this back right here, this is 192.175. Remember, 3389 is the RDP protocol for the remote desktop session. So if I open Netstat here, CMD, and let me do a netstat -n as well, you're gonna see that I have the local address 192.168.75 is connected to 192.168.170.19 on 51706, which is this right here. See, 51706, 51706. So the purpose of network ports is to keep track of the sessions, because in this case I only have one connection connecting to 192.168.175 on RDP. But if I had multiple connections connecting over RDP to this computer, then I'm gonna have the system is gonna keep track of those sessions by keeping track of those ports, because the system needs to know how to communicate and connect to other systems, right? So everybody's gonna be connecting to 192.168.170.5 3389 when they wanna connect to RDP. But the system is going to keep track of other sessions. So maybe in here, you're going to see another IP address with a different port number and so on and so forth. So that's how the system is going to keep track of this. So let me bring this diagram here and try to maybe use it in this way or explain it in this way. So I'm gonna use this. Actually, this is not a good diagram. Let me bring the other basic diagram that I have for these kind of examples. So in this diagram, I'm gonna use this is a basic example, right? I'm gonna use it on layer 2, nothing complicated. So I have this device that is connected physically to this device, to the switch, and this device connected to the switch. But logically, this device, remember, this is the host that I want to connect to over RDP, and this host is listening to port 3389. And when I established the session, RDP is going to use, or the system in this case, the client, right? We're going to call this the server, and this is going to be the client. The client is going to use an ephemeral port to connect that session to port 3389. So the client was using what, 51706, I believe it was, to establish that session. But what I wanted to show you is this. Let's say that we have another device here that also wants to connect to this host on port 3389. When the connection is established, that connection is going to be established, and let's say that it's going to pick another port, let's say 52531, 52,431. as an ephemeral port, and on the session table of the server computer, you're gonna see that it's having another session established on port 3389 to 52.431. Now, again, the purpose, I don't wanna get this thing too confusing. The purpose of network ports is to keep track of the connection sessions over the transport protocols. And again, something else you have to keep in mind is that the network ports are associated to a service, right? So in this case, I'm using RDP on 3389. I'm using the default port of 3389, but you could have a service listening on a different port than the port that is intended to listen on. For instance, I can configure RDP to listen on port 3398 or any other port you would like to use. But you have to be careful with that, because sometimes when you change the port numbers, you have to make sure the application is going to be able to support that, right? You don't want to use, for instance, 21 for RDP, because you may run into some issues, because there is a well-known port that is dedicated for that. But the ports are going to keep track of the sessions, and the sessions are going to be connected or are going to be associated to a service. So the last thing that I want to show you is this: is that if you do a help on Netstat, but this is on Windows, but it's a similar concept on other operating systems. You can display the executable file or process that is associated with that session. For that, you need admin privileges. So let me come here and run this as administrator. And if you do netstat -b, you are gonna see that the system is gonna display it's going to display the executable name. In this case, is categorizing these as terminal services, but it's the same thing as RDP, right? So you could see that in there. So this is very useful when you are doing analysis on network traffic analysis. If you want to see sessions, especially if you're dealing with malwares and you want to see the sessions that are being established and all that, so you could use this for this. So I really hope this video help you if you're looking into a different way of understanding what network ports are and how they work. I could have gone into more and more examples, but I believe this is a good basic explanation. If you have another question about network ports and how they work, or if you want something to be clarified, leave it on the comment sections and I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. So if you like this video, all I ask is for you to click on the like button, subscribe to my channel. If you didn't like it, I hope you find one that you like and that you understand the concept. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you on the next video.